Hi guys, in this video we're going to be looking at a driving test from Colwick. Now on this one the pupil is actually out on test on his own and I wasn't in the back of the car. However, because there were so few faults, it's really easy to analyse where these faults are and help you see what happens on an actual test. So coming out of Colwick Driving Test Centre, we want to take our time down this driveway. It's quite narrow. We want to be looking for oncoming vehicles. It's very, very tight coming around the bends too. You'll notice the giveaway there for cars coming in. They should let people out before they come in. And as we come round, we've got a giveaway as well. Watch the left side because there is a pathway just by this gate. You want to check there's no pedestrians and cyclists coming out there from behind that hedge. The pupil does a really good job here, coming around nice and slowly past the truck. There's not a lot of space there, so keeping the speed low and keeping on those mirrors is absolutely essential when you're going through gaps like that. As you're coming down this road, just be mindful of the entries on either side as well for vehicles coming in and out of them. As we come up to the end, we're going to be turning left onto the next road, and that will bring us up to the roundabout by Sainsbury's, which is where I normally start some of my mock tests because we're not allowed in the test centre while tests are active. Coming out onto this road as well, just be mindful of HGVs coming up and down here. It's a very, very busy road during the day for HGVs. So especially the recycling trucks down the end, they love to fly down this road. Up ahead, you can see a few parked trucks. You can see one coming towards us as well that's holding back for the learner. And the cyclist on the left. Now the pupil does a really nice job at keeping a good following space on this cyclist as he comes down the road. It's not worth overtaking when we've got bends and driveways ahead. So again, the pupil's hanging back, and I think this is pretty reasonable in this circumstance. We've also got roundabout just round the bend, so we don't want to be overtaken as we come up to a junction, as that would cause us to potentially have to brake in front of that cyclist, which would really pee them off if you've just overtaken them. The cyclist's going to use the cutout there to go down to the next road. We're going to be taking a left first exit, so we're going to have to deal with that cyclist again in a moment. The roundabout, just be mindful of cars from the right, of course. Keep your mind on where you're going and make good progress if it's safe. And the pupil does a really nice job of doing that. This is where he's about to pick up his first driver fault. Now, overtaking the cyclist, I think, is a fair decision on a road like this. However, notice the giveaway on the right. If a vehicle's coming up to that road to turn left towards us, then we're putting our faith in them seeing us before they pull out, and that is quite a risky situation. Now, because nothing came of it and the pupil was looking around plenty, he's got away with a driver fault on this occasion. However, that could be very different if someone did come up to that junction, especially if they pulled out without looking first. A lot of people doing left turns will look right before they pull out and then look left as they pull out. So that's something we want to be very, very careful of when we choose to make an overtake like this. Notice the HGV parked on the left here and the oncoming van. So the pupil spots this really early and he holds back. He's keeping a really good distance behind that lorry there, so he's got plenty of room to go around it. He's not right up the back of it where it's going to cause a big obstruction to his view and a lot of work to get around. So this is exactly how we want to do it. Plenty of room, plenty of view around that truck, and that way we can see what's going on. We can make a better decision when to overtake. As always, when we decide to pass vehicles like this, we want to make sure we're on those mirrors, looking for vehicles that are coming up behind who might potentially try to skip around you, and that you're prepared for that. If you're not on those mirrors, you don't know what's happening, so you can't prepare for it. And the examiners will be very aware of what you're doing with your mirrors, so keep your head moving, keep your eyes moving. Your head especially is going to open up that peripheral view. When you're moving away from the roadside like this, the examiners want to see a full turn around, so you're looking over that right shoulder. Don't just use your eyes and your mirrors. Full turn around and cover that blind spot. As we come around here, the pupil's going to be going left at the traffic lights. Now, you want to be mindful there is a little cutout on the left. So if you're signaling too early, people are going to think you want to go down that cutout. There's also a keep clear marking here. It's very, very faded. And because that's on, because it's so faded, I think the examiners let him off with this one. Now, ideally, of course, if we see those keep clears, we want to keep them clear. That's exactly the whole point of them. But where they're really poorly marked and it's unreasonable to say that they're visible, I don't think the examiners can fairly mark you for that. So keep an eye out for them. If you do notice them, keep clear. Simple as that. When we're sat at traffic lights, remember to keep your eyes moving too. Don't just stare at the traffic light. Don't just stare at the car in front. Keep your eyes moving around. Take a few deep breaths as well and reset your mind, because if you're dwelling on mistakes like maybe a dodgy overtake, then you're going to be distracted from what you're doing next. You reset and start from fresh at this point. Everything you've done, you can't change. So what's the point in sitting there thinking about it and distracting yourself from what you're actually doing next? As we come out onto the loop road here, there are 2 lanes. The markings are absolutely appalling. Use the curb as your guide. But you can see the arrows up ahead. They're very, very faded. There are 2 lanes. Make sure you stick near that curb. And as you're doing that, keep an eye on the right-hand side for anyone coming up behind you, potentially to overtake you, especially here where they are going to merge into your lane. So we want to make sure we know who's coming past, and if we need to do anything about it, then we can do it. Mindful of the crossing too, nobody using it, so not an issue. And then of course you've got the bus lane. This one also is a ULEV lane, which particular vehicles can use, such as electric cars. There's a few select hybrids that can use it too, but my car can't. So my pupils sensibly stuck out in the right hand lane. If you're in a Tesla, use that left lane, have at it, because if you don't use it, and you can, you will get faulted. So if your Instructor or your own car is electric when you do your test, make sure you use that lane. If you're not sure about the vehicle you're in, then ask your instructor, they should know. And if you're not using that lane, make sure you keep an eye on the left mirror for anyone who is. Sometimes you'll get cars pass on the left side and they can come up quite quickly because they're not sitting in the same traffic as you. So very mindful of that left mirror, particularly as you come towards the end of that bus lane if you intend to use the left lane for the roundabouts. Up ahead, we're coming to a roundabout. Now, this one you can use either lane to go straight ahead. Whichever lane you choose, make sure you stick to that position as you cross the roundabout. So the pupils chose the left lane. You can see him sticking into that left lane, and it just leads him straight off the other side. The van on the right there giving a good example of how to use the right-hand lane for that roundabout. And then as we cross, we've got the bus lane again, that ULEV lane. So if you can't use it, make sure you get on those right mirrors, get those signals on, and move out safely. Remembering to keep it on the left mirror there. Just like the Tesla here, you'll see electric vehicles using that lane through the day, so you want to keep your eyes out for them. At the next roundabout, the pupil's going straight ahead again, and again you can use both lanes to do this. Whichever lane you use, make sure you stick it as you cross the roundabout. It is a little bit tight, particularly coming the other way on this roundabout, so you want to be really, really slow and steady and on those mirrors like a hawk. We also want to keep our mind ahead of us, because on the other side of this roundabout there is a crossing straight away, and you'll notice there are people there walking up to it ready to use it. If them lights change, you want to be prepared for that, and that will help you keep a nice smooth stop if you need to. On the left here, you'll notice a sign telling us that the lanes separate in terms of directions. This is bringing us up to Lady Bay Island. You'll see the diagram for that up ahead. There's a really simple way of viewing this. Your left lane is going to split into 2, and those are going to take you left towards Grantham. Your right lane will split into 2, and if you follow them round, it will take you towards city centre. So we're going towards Grantham. The pupil's taking the left-hand lane, which is absolutely perfect. No signals because there's a one-way street on the left as you come around the corner, and we're not going down there. We're going straight ahead, second exit towards Grantham. So you'll see that road on the left there, and you'll see how the left lane just carries on straight off the other side. Just be mindful again of this crossing. If you come off the roundabout and you're not paying attention to that crossing, you could easily get caught out. Notice the Mercedes in front braking and then signalling. He's not turning, he's going to pull up on the left. So the response to this should be cover those right mirrors, take your time like the pupil does, and make your way through safely. We need to change lane because of the sign on the left here, which is telling us left lane goes left only, and the pupil wants to be in the right lane to go straight ahead. If you don't get the opportunity to change position, if you run out of room to do that, then there's no harm carrying on that left lane and then just turning left where it tells you to. It's better to go the wrong way safely than to try and go the right way dangerously. We want to keep things really simple and really predictable for the other drivers around us, so we're not causing anyone any surprises or disruption to their journey too, because that's what's going to get you faulted on your test. Notice the pupils keeping a good space behind the van there, a little bit of room, so if the van rolls back or if we need to get around the van for whatever reason, then there's plenty of room to do that. You may notice the filter light on the left comes on and that lane on the left can keep on moving. So if you're going straight ahead, you do not want to be holding that lane up. So if you're in that lane, just go left. As we cross the junction, the examiners will be looking for good use of the right mirror. These lanes merge just up ahead. So the examiners want to see that you're aware of who's potentially going to try to get around you, and then you can plan safely and effectively based on that information. Up ahead, there's a little warning sign on the left. It tells us the road bends to the right with a junction ahead of us. Now, this is technically a left turn, and like the car in front, we should be signaling to cross that line into this road. We don't want to be coming around there without a signal. If you're following the road ahead, you'll be expected to go round to the right like the signs and markings direct you. So be very mindful of unusual junction layouts like that. As we approach the traffic lights, you'll notice there's two lanes and the pupils took up the left-hand position. Both lanes go left, so there's nowhere else we can go. And as you can see, the vehicles in front, there's no signals, and that's absolutely fine in this kind of situation. There's nowhere else we can go. It's obvious we're going to go left, so the signals become a little bit redundant there. Again, the pupil's keeping a good space behind the car in front. When we do make this turn, we want to be mindful of vehicles like the bin truck on the right of us. As he comes around the corner, he might cut that corner. And of course, we want to be prepared for that by not being alongside his back wheels. So we want to keep clear of the bin lorry as he turns, either clearly in front or clearly behind, but definitely not alongside as he makes that turn, because that's where you're going to be at the most risk. Coming out of here is a very, very tight turn, and the pupil, as you'll see, takes it really slowly and he pulls straight into that left-hand lane, which is where we should be. The Audi going into lane 2 is fine as well, because lane 2 on the turn goes into lane 3 and 4. Like the lorry there, the bin lorry went straight into lane 3. As we're approaching the crossing, just be mindful of the vans and how they block your view. If you've got a situation like this and the vans don't immediately move, then you should expect that something is in their way, maybe a pedestrian crossing the road who's a little slower. So we don't just want to come flying past that van without being certain that that road is clear first. Up ahead, the pupil is going to be following the road towards West Bridgeford. So this lane is absolutely perfect for doing that. The sign tells us that's where we want to be. It's going to bring us straight through this set of lights. And then at the next set, you'll see we can only go left. Notice the blue sign up ahead telling us bus lane. Then we've got the sign telling us the left lane does not go ahead unless you're a bus. So you can see the bus going straight ahead into that bus lane, the markings directing us to the left. Pupil does a really nice job of that. We're then taking a right turn, This is quite an unusual one because sometimes people will move into the middle of the road, which is actually an oncoming lane. Make sure you stay in your lane, round that post, mindful of pedestrians. You can see they're definitely waiting. If they do want to cross that road and they make any sign that they're going to go, then you should let them have that opportunity. Don't just come powering on through. Up ahead's quite an unusual one. The examiner gets the pupil to stop on double yellow lines. Now, normally, I wouldn't ask a pupil to stop on double yellow lines, and neither would an examiner. So I'm guessing there was some reason for them to do this. Keep in mind, double yellow lines mean you are not allowed to wait or park. But what you are allowed to do is pull up for a moment while you're loading or picking up a passenger or dropping someone off. Because the examiners ask the pupil to do this, it's not going to be marked as a fault. But ideally, if you're told to pull up at a safe place, do not stop on double yellow lines. Up ahead, the pupil's going to be directed through some very narrow side streets. Whenever you're dealing with tight roads like this, it's really important to bring your speed right down and crawl through. Use your mirrors plenty and look well ahead for oncoming cars, because you might have to tuck into a gap to let them pass, or they might have to tuck into a gap to let you pass. Just by this church is where we'll be turning left. And as you'll see, it's a very, very tight corner. So the pupil's bringing his speed right down, particularly with the car waiting to come out. That makes it even narrower, so there's no room for the front to swing out. You've got to keep really close to that corner and looking up through the gap before you commit to driving through. So the pedestrian just appeared out of nowhere. That's exactly what we're looking for on roads like this. People walking out from behind big vehicles, cars starting to move off, anything that could cause you an issue. You can see the pupil really taking his time here as he makes his way through this narrow road. With this van coming the other way, the pupil's already in the gap and doesn't really have a good opportunity to let the van through. So he's going to carry on moving, and the van, of course, seeing how tight that is, has changed his mind and decided to go the other way. So there's not really a lot the pupil had to do about that situation. However, if the van had started to come through that gap, I'd say that would be entirely the van's issue, because we're already in that gap. If you've got someone coming the other way who's already in a gap, let them finish, even if you would normally have priority. At the end of the road, the learner's going to be turning right. And again, this is a really tight junction. You can see the car parked on the other side, which narrows the space we've got to turn. And the pupil does a really nice job keeping it really slow as he comes to the end of the road and just guiding the car out into the new road. It's very narrow, so again, you've got to check both ways and that you've got a safe path into that junction and out the other side of it. This junction in particular is very awkward because looking to the left from the angle you're at is quite difficult. Again, the pupil stopped completely. He's got plenty of time to look up and down the road, and all he's got to do is find a gap and make his way out. Noticing all the parked cars on the other side, we want to be careful of oncoming vehicles. So the bus, for example, we may not be able to fit between the bus and the parked cars, so you just let that go through before you pull out. Don't pull out if you're not sure that you've got space to get through. Don't feel that you've got to rush out because there's space to get in front of the vehicle if there's no way through that road ahead. Now, the examiners will understand what you're looking at. You don't need to explain it to them. Keep in mind, they watch 35 people go for the test every week on a normal week for them. So they know exactly what they're looking for and exactly what you're doing. You don't need to explain it or overthink it. Just do what's right. Up at the zebra crossing, of course, you can see there's a few people moving around. Nobody close enough or showing the intention to cross, so the pupil keeps it moving. Absolutely perfect. Same again, we've got another crossing ahead, and then we've got a mini roundabout. Now, the examiners will not say this to you, but there's a no entry sign ahead of you. You must turn right at this roundabout because it's clearly signposted. The examiners expect you to see that and follow the road round to the right. Again, watch for these crossings as you come off of the junctions. Really easy to miss them because you can be so focused on the junction itself that you forget to look at the road you're going into. So always look at your exit route before you go into a junction, and that will help you plan and keep safe. Another zebra crossing, and again nice and clear, and another one up ahead just before another mini roundabout. So this is West Bridgford Centre, and it can get quite busy at times. You'll see that as we take a left here in. Again, mini roundabouts, you want to be careful of cars from the right. You want to be looking into your turn to the left and keeping the wheels pointed at where you want to go. And the pupil does a really nice job of that. Another zebra crossing, another mini roundabout, and on the other side you can see yet another zebra crossing. So lots of information to process, and the trick is keep your mind ahead on where you want to go and keep your eyes scanning for anyone who's going to get in the way of that. So on these crossings, we're looking for anyone walking up to the crossing, the roundabout, traffic on the right, and then again, the next crossing, scanning those sides. So before we cross that mini roundabout, we know it's safe. The pupil is going to take a right turn here. And again, this is another really narrow street. So you want to be looking up into that road. You can see all the parked cars. You can see the posts dividing you from the oncoming cars. So you bring the car in, and then you've got to be careful going around these parked cars into that new road. See how slow the learner does this? Absolutely beautifully done. If you come around there too quickly and there is something coming the other way or something going on in that road, it's only going to give you problems and cause more work for you. So take your time on streets like this. Pulling up on the left here, you'll notice these are single yellow lines. Now, single yellow lines will normally have a signpost every so often telling you what the restrictions are on these. Much like a double yellow line, you're not allowed to park on them or wait on them, but you can stop briefly and you can load and you can pick up passengers. The difference when it comes to single yellow lines is they are time restricted, so they only apply at the times displayed on the signs nearby. So you'll see those yellow signs on some of the lampposts when you're passing those yellow signs, or on the entry to the road, you'll have a controlled zone. So it applies to every road that you can see up until you see the end of the controlled zone. During this stop, the pupil is stopped for a little bit longer, partially because the oncoming car, but also because the examiner is explaining that he'd like to do a parallel park using the mini that you can see ahead. So when you're asked to do a maneuver, the examiners will always pull you over and explain what you're going to do. They're not just going to say, do it now. So you can take your time when you move away. You've got time to process the information before you pull out again. Don't rush yourself into that situation. Take your time and really focus on what you want to do. Make sure you've got a full understanding before you move on. With this maneuver, the pupil does a really good job. You can see the pace is really low. The steering's really accurate as well, steering left to bring the car in. At this point, we want to be really aware of what's on the right. If you're not checking your right blind spot, you're swinging the front out blindly into what could be coming around you. So you've got to cover those mirrors. You've got to cover those blind spots frequently. Again, really slow pace. You can see the pupil steering right now to bring the front end in, and how perfectly aligned that is. That was a really, really good example of parallel parking there. And it's a real shame that we can only see the front camera on this, that we can't see the whole process. But absolutely spot on there. You can see we're in line with the Mini. He did it in one move, and because he's got no faults for his observation either, he must have had his head moving around like a barn owl looking for food. At the end here, you notice these white lines leading us up to the giveaway. The pupil's going to be going left. On the left there, you'll see the sign there saying the zone ends. That's why I was referring to about the controlled zone. So there'll be restrictions on the other side of that sign, which tell us what the parking restrictions are on that road. We'll have seen them on the way in on the other end. You can always rewind and look for those if you want to. Coming out another tight road, so you can see the pupil's really, really cautious to come out, but absolutely spot on in terms of the way it does it. There's no rush getting through these gaps. He's weighing up the space. He's no doubt using the mirrors to keep an eye on how much room he's got. And as he gets more room, you can see him moving out a little bit wider to get past those parked cars. Ideally, when you're passing parked cars, you want to leave enough room for them doors to open And that means if someone does throw the door open without looking, or a man walks around the back of a van with a wheelie bin, then you're going to have space between you and those vehicles before that person is in your path or that door is in your path. At the end here, we're turning left. Notice we're back into a 30 zone. Now, just a heads up here that if you're following Sat Nav, some Sat Navs will still say 40 on this road. It is a 30 zone, so you must pay attention to those signs. Don't rely on the Sat Nav to tell you what the speed limit is. Sitting here, it's quite a hard junction to get out of. It's quite a busy road, and there's not much view until you get right to the end. So you can see the pupils right up to the end. He's got his bumper on that giveaway line, so we can see around the hedges that are on the right. And it's just a case of sitting patiently until a gap comes up that you can get into safely. Try not to feel rushed or pressured if you're waiting for a while, because sometimes you just have to sit tight and wait for a gap. And if you're on your test, sometimes you can feel like you should have gone, and that pressure can build up and you'll start trying to rush out of that junction into a gap that's not big enough. Now, the pupil commented on that junction that he did start to get that feeling. He was about to go at one of the gaps, but then changed his mind and said, no, there's no point rushing. And he's absolutely right there. And as you can see, that's what kept him from getting any faults on that junction. Notice the sign on the right there. The pupil is going to be bearing right back towards Colwick. So as the road opens up ahead, what you want to do on this junction is lean over to the right-hand side of the division, but keep to the left-hand lane on that side of the division. So you'll see the pupil do a really nice job here. It looks like lane 3 as you're approaching it, and then they separate to go different directions. So he ends up on the left-hand lane of his road. Now that's exactly where we want to be, the left-hand position, as often as we can. If the left lane doesn't work for you, don't use it. If you're overtaking, if you're turning right, or if, like earlier, that left lane is a left only and you're not going that way, then they're the only times really you don't want to be in lane 1. But ideally, if lane 1 goes where you're going, that's where you should be. As we cross the bridge here, we're then coming to a set of traffic lights where we'll be turning right. Now that's going to be signposted as Southall, and there are 2 lanes that allow you to turn right. So part of this depends on where you're going next. Normally, you'll be going right again back towards the test centre down the loop road, which is also signposted Southall. So as you come down, you want to keep in the far right-hand lane. The middle lane also turns right, which would then lead you left at the roundabout, which would take you towards city centre. So this lane is perfect to get back to the test centre. It's just a case of keeping to the right as you make that turn. Keep in mind these cars on the left may cut the corner, and it is quite tight as you come around this post here. So be very conscious of your left mirror. Now, like I said earlier, when we came the other way across this island, this is Ladybird Island. You've got 2 lanes that will lead you to the first main exit and 2 lanes that will lead you round to the second main exit. There's also 3 smaller exits between each of the 3 main exits. So 2 lanes for left, 2 lanes for right is the easy way of explaining this. You can see the pupils taking up lane 3. As he comes round, lane 1 and 2 go off towards city centre. So he becomes lane 1. And as he comes around the curve here, you want to get all the way out to that curb as you come round. See that brighter patch of curb? Aim at that. And then as you leave, you're in lane 1. And that's the perfect lineup. If you change lane on the way around that, that will be a serious fault on your test. So you've got to make sure you practice that lineup. If you do enter in lane 4, then you'll leave in lane 2. If you leave in lane 2, when you leave that roundabout, check your left side, and if it's safe, move into lane 1, because remember, lane 1 is the ideal position. As we approach the next roundabout, you'll see the retail park on the left here. The pupils in lane 1, which is absolutely fine. It's a very, very tight roundabout. So what we want to do is keep really close to the curb like the van in front. really wide on that curve as we come around to the other side. So you can see the pupil does not too bad a job there. He could be a little tighter, but it wasn't enough for the examiner to mark a fault. And then straight on the right mirror is right signal and over into lane 2 because we're not allowed to use that bus lane. Just like when we came the other way along the loop road here, you can use that lane if you're an electric vehicle and a select few hybrids, but my vehicle is not suitable. Just up ahead here on the right, you'll see a recycling truck coming the other way, and behind it is a stunning little Lotus Elise. I've always had a real soft spot for those cars, just thought I'd point it out to you. At the roundabout, you can see the crossing here. We got a red light and everyone queuing up. Notice how the pupil's staying out of that bus lane. You can use both lanes as you cross this roundabout, just like you can the other way around. And of course, whichever lane you're in, you want to make sure you are sticking that lane. Notice how the pupil repositions after the solid line, and that's absolutely spot on. Don't cross that solid line if you can avoid it. There is a little bit of leeway if you nip the end of it, but ideally don't do it. Coming across the roundabout as well, keep an eye on your right mirror for anyone coming with you because they could cause you an issue on the other side, such as this van. Knowing that vehicle's there means you can plan more effectively when it comes to moving out as that bus lane starts up again. And as I said, that doesn't apply to electric car drivers. You don't need to move out. You can use that bus lane. I can't because I've got a dirty little hybrid. As we come back into civilization here, you'll notice the 30-mile-an-hour sign over on the left and the right. Just be mindful of those and make sure your speed comes down in good time for them. They're very easily overlooked. I find a lot of pupils, I have to remind them about that sign as we come into this area. So just watch out for those. Keep your eyes moving for any speed changes, particularly those ones, like I say, a lot of people overlook them. Up ahead, the pupil is going to be turning right. So when that bus lane ends, he's going to stick in lane 2. If you're not turning right up ahead, this is the point you should be looking on the left mirror, getting that signal on and moving into lane 1. It does get a little bit tight at the satellites where we're going to be turning, so be very mindful of who's on your left, or if you're in the left lane, who's on your right, in order to keep yourself safe and keep yourself right up to your curb as you come through that next set of lights. Now these set of lights, we do have a filter light, but it doesn't come on straight away. As you can see, we've just got a green light and all the oncoming traffic is starting to move. See how the pupil leans in towards them, keeping the other side clear, so cars turning right there have plenty of room to do so. He's also keeping back enough that if anyone's using that second lane to carry on straight, they can just drive straight past him without any problems. While you're waiting at lights like these, it's important to look further down the road for a gap that's come in, but also keep aware of that filter light, because if the filter light comes on and you're too busy looking down the road for a gap and you miss that filter light, you're going to end up getting a serious fault for not responding to those lights. Pupil does a nice job there finding a gap, and away he goes. Just be careful there, the red light as we leave the junction doesn't apply to us, so don't get caught out by those when you're turning right at traffic lights. When you're driving down long straights like this, be mindful of gaps in the traffic coming the other way, particularly where the view's good. If you've got traffic behind you, that's going to be a very tempting opportunity for them to overtake. So we want to be on those mirrors as those gaps appear, and that way you can prepare for someone to overtake you if that's what they're planning on doing. Now, whilst most people won't overtake you on a road like this, if you're keeping up to the speed limit, if you're making good progress, it doesn't mean you won't get overtaken. So just keep an eye out for them. Also be mindful of cars like this who may just pull out thinking they can follow the other vehicle out as well. So the red van there could have caused a risk. You can see the pupil reduces speed in response to that. We're just coming back into the test centre in a moment. So at the roundabout, it's a right turn, third exit. Watch for cars on the other side coming round the roundabout, like the Mini there. They could be turning right, so look out for signals, look out for where the driver's looking, look out for the front wheels and how they lean as they come around the top of the roundabout too. I find that a more effective thing to look at when we're dealing with roundabouts. If those wheels come towards you, the car is going to follow the wheels. As we leave the roundabout, you can see the HGV up ahead as well. The pupil's got a plan for oncoming vehicles here and be ready to hold back if he needs to. So looking well ahead, you can see a brilliant gap. The pupil's out nice and early and back in again. Watch for driveways too, because vehicles coming out here, like I said earlier, they may be looking to the right, might see that no one's coming, and they start moving as they look up to the left. And if we're on the wrong side overtaking something, that could be a problem. Turning right here into road number 5, and that's going to lead us back into the test centre. Now that's going to bring us to the end of the driving test. It's just got to get back into the test centre car park and park up. Now coming in here, you want to be very, very slow. Like we said on the way out, the test centre driveway is quite narrow at points, and on the way in, you have to give way to the cars that are coming out of the test centre, and you'll see those markings as you come round. So you've got to be looking up that driveway for anyone coming out of the test centre. Be mindful as well, we've got the footpath ahead. There's that gap just between the hedge and the gate post, which I was on about on the way out. Be mindful of people coming in and out of there. And like I say, there's those giveaway markings. Look up the driveway for anyone coming down and towards the exit and give way to them, and then bring yourself up to the car park. At the end of the test, the examiners might ask you to do what this pupil does and drive forwards into any space. They'll be very clear that you're not being marked for this, so don't worry if you miss the space. That brings this driving test to an end, and as you can see, the pupil passed with a fantastic result. Thank you ever so much for watching this. Please like, share and subscribe, and I'll keep these coming. Thank you again. God bless you all.